meeting of Ukiah Unified School Board to order. And I will get by my microphone. I'd like to say welcome to all of the people that are here this evening. It's nice to see some faces that we know well and some different faces. I would like to remind you to silence your cell phones and electronic devices. And tonight's meeting is being live streamed on Ukiah Unified's YouTube channel. The link is accessible on our website. Trustees, be sure that you have your microphone turned on and speak into the microphone. And if any audience members wish to address the board, please fill out a public comment form and present it to our executive assistant prior to the beginning of public comment. Public comment is taken for items not on the agenda. Each speaker is given 5 minutes. I think we've changed that, have we? And public comment for items on the agenda is taken at the time of the item. And each speaker is given 5 minutes. Okay. So at this time, I would like to have the flag salute, and I've asked Mr. Stearns if he would lead us in the flag salute.
Rise. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Stearns. At this time, Superintendent Kubin is going to do a report out from closed session.
On item B6, consideration of certificated leave of absence request. It was moved by Nelson, seconded by Mulgard to approve the request of a certificated staff member through the end of the year and the next school year. It was a roll call vote, 6-0. Absent was for Trustee Fernandez on all of these. A second certificated leave request for the next school year. It was moved and seconded to approve leave request pending employment verification by May 15th, and that was approved 6-0 roll call vote. On item B7, consideration of classified leave of absence requests. Concerning a classified employee leave request, it was moved and seconded to deny a classified employee's request for an unpaid leave of absence, and that was done by roll call vote, 6-0. Another classified staff member leave request for a time period of the day was approved, and that was approved via roll call vote, 6-0. And that leave is concerning a leave for, I believe, 2 hours a day through the end of the school year. Another classified leave request was moved and seconded to deny the request, 6-0 roll call vote. Also concerning item B9, it was moved and seconded to accept the claim against Ukiah Unified School District, and that was approved 6-0 roll call vote. And that is all.
Okay. That was a lot. Thank you, Superintendent Kubin. At this point, we need a motion to approve the agenda.
Can I request that item I-24 on consent be brought up for discussion?
Okay.
I-24, I think. It's the E-rate, the contract award for the E-rate.
Okay, so we should move that to maybe D.
We can do it late in the evening.
Just do it before the, okay,
Okay.
okay, right.
So I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the movement of item I-24 to just
All
before
right,
consent.
do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. At this point, we have a report from our student advisor, and this evening, we are pleased to have Maggie Flaherty here as a representative for Devon from Ukiah High.
All right, so the Friday before spring break, we had an every 15 minutes demonstration.
Can you turn your mic on, Maggie? Thank you.
Yeah, an every 15 minutes demonstration on the Ukiah High School campus. I believe it went very well. We had the entire student body go out to the corner of Despina and Low Gap. There was a mock drunk driving accident there. And then throughout the day, students were pulled out of class every 15 minutes to demonstrate the tragic effects of a drunk driving accident. I have gotten lots of very nice comments from students saying that it was very influential, very powerful, and the assembly also had very good reviews. This coming Friday is an Earth Day celebration at the high school. There will be an assembly. We have several guest speakers coming. And there will be a fair on campus that has several clubs and several community organizations. And it's just generally to promote the idea of Earth Day and protecting our Earth. Also this Friday, the music department is having their annual Spring Fling, just kind of a spring showcase of all of the talent in the music department, and I do not have a time for that, but it is this Friday in the cafeteria. It's at 7, okay. April 27th is our talent show. We have 9 performers, and that is at 6:30, April 27th in the cafeteria as well. The sophomore class puts that on, and they've been working very hard on that. Prom is April 29th. It's out at Red Barn Ranch, and we are currently in the process of selling tickets. Prom project is going on currently. It was this past Tuesday and Wednesday. That is a project helped put on by the Arbor, and that provides free dresses and suits to students that aren't able to purchase their own prom dresses and suits. So that was very successful. I think quite a few students went and took advantage of that. So yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you so much. It was very nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Yes, B?
I just wanted to let the board know that Maggie will be going to Dartmouth next year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. Now do we have any public comment? Debbie, do we have any public comment? Haven't received any, okay. So at this point, we'll have our employee organization reports. So Lisa, do you have a CSEA report for us?
I really don't need a microphone, but I guess the live streaming has to have a microphone. Hello. Just kidding. So first, I'd like to apologize for not being here. I am done with family emergencies. Let's all pray. Take a moment of silence for me. That would be fantastic. So the last 2 CSEA meetings happen to fall on the same night as the board meeting night, which we try not to do, so I can bring back what I learned here to them. But that's okay. So today we decided May 12th at 5:30 will be our CSEA barbecue. That we have not had. It's not to be confused with the Personnel Commission classified barbecue. This is for our members from CSEA, and we're going to do it at Todd Grove Park. It'll be hamburgers and hot dogs and chips and salads, and we're just going to get together and have a good time, play frisbee, hang out, just fellowship. So hopefully we will get some good participation. Last meeting we had Mike Jowers leave and go to, he went back home, North Carolina. So I didn't have a first vice. and we had a vacancy, and we didn't have a second vice. We had a vacancy because that one left a while ago. So our members voted in Julia Naha as our second vice president, and Stephanie Maldonado is our first vice president. So they're here trying to just learn the ropes so we can kind of alternate, which is very exciting. And it's always exciting to have new blood. And, you know, I think that that's important, that we spread the joy. I like that. So Monday, we will be opening negotiations for the 2017-18 year with the district, which is exciting. We're moving right along, trying to get stuff going and done and closed. That would be great. We closed negotiations for 2016-17 year. Our last meeting, we voted on that, ratified, and voted on 2 MOUs, I believe, and that was also completed. So the other thing, we finally received a case number from the Ukiah Police Department after it kind of got stuck on somebody's desk and lost because one of their officers went out, which I'm grateful that they called us and gave us a case number for the misappropriation of funds from the last regime. So that's exciting to us too, because there's some movement there. And then our chapter approved an annual budget, and we haven't had anything bad happen. So there's that. So we're moving right along, and this month is CSEA recognizes the libraries, the school libraries is the month of April. So they do some recognition of librarians and such. I didn't get anybody's names, so I apologize for that, but just know that that's what April is for CSEA. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, Terry Yevas, do you have a report for us?
Good evening. Thank you. It's been a busy month, even though we had spring break, and some things that are coming up. A few teachers will be attending the Redwood Educators Conference in Petaluma tomorrow night and Saturday. There are some really great workshops there. One is called More Month Than Money, and another one is just called Stressed. So those are kind of the things that some of us are feeling at this time of the year. Members of the California Senate Education Committee heard yesterday, and I don't know what the outcome of this was, for SB 806 by Stephen Glazer, which would be carrying the Trump-DeVos agenda here in California to expand unregulated charter schools and seek to remove laws that protect public funding from being misused at charter schools. I'm not really sure the outcome of that. I haven't been paying attention because I've been really busy. Our partnership meetings with the district continue to go well, with problems being solved before they blow up into bigger issues. Teachers feel that our unit and the district are getting closer to having interim assessments which will focus on improving instruction. This has been the main issue with assessments this year, so we're feeling positive about that. And the FIT team, which is the fiscal integrity team, will be meeting on Tuesday to look at the formula. Our retirement dinner to honor our teachers will be on May 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. Next, we have the leadership team report, and is that Dana Alani tonight?
Good evening. I'm going to get the... So what my PowerPoint is tonight about is PBIS again. I just want to keep going back to that idea of how important it is to have a school climate and the PBIS system in place at schools. And I'm just going to let you know what we're doing a little bit at Ukiah. I'm going to go quickly through. This is a little bit of what we do. These are the 4 main things we do at Ukiah. The new one that we added this year is Rachel's Challenge, and that's where I'll spend most of my time speaking to you about. We do character counts, love and logic. We fill buckets. If you walk around my campus, all you see are galvanized buckets full of anything from coupons to chains, and I'll talk about that later, to coins, flowers, whatever. So we have buckets full of everything. And Rachel's challenge. So character counts is based on these 6 character traits: trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. It is the overview of everything that we do. We have signs in all areas of the campus. We have assemblies every 6 weeks on this. We have videos of children's accomplishments that's broadcast throughout the school. And we have check-in, check-out that's based on character counts. And what we've added to that are academic goals inside of their check-in, check-out too. So what we do is, okay, if we're going to be respectful in class, these are the things that we have to do. If we're responsible, are we turning in our homework? So we're trying to tie those more to academic goals as well, not just behavior goals. We're doing Love and Logic at school, and this is really how adults communicate with children. And we see that we have a great need for that. We have a lot of turnover in the para positions, and I have quite a few brand new teachers. So Love and Logic is a philosophy founded by Jim Fay. Wrong capital letter. It's ongoing professional development. I'm sending 7 teachers to this training this summer, and it emphasizes respect, dignity, it provides limits, and it really gives kids like a choice, like you can either do this or this. And what it does is not only does it de-stress the child, but it de-stresses the adult as well. So I always give choices, but both of those choices are outcomes that I want. So we use this to communicate with adults, to communicate with students. And then we use, bucket filling. And bucket filling is how we have students communicate with each other. And so how do we talk to each other? And filling a bucket means, how do you make somebody feel better? What can you say to another student that makes them feel better about themselves in the hallway, in school, in the cafeteria, anywhere? So we are always looking for bucket fillers at school. We had the author of she's got several bucket filling books. She came to school last year or the year before and spoke to our students as an author. So it was wonderful, and we carry on bucket filling. So when I looked at these 3 components, I thought to myself, these are all fabulous and wonderful. But how am I teaching them this? What are the strategies that I can use to do this? And last summer I was sitting and watching TV on a rare occasion, all by myself, no less, no children, no anything. And there was this talk show that had this book they were talking about, and it's called Unselfie. And I thought to myself, that's what I'm missing. How do I get kids to be empathetic? You can't have them be respectful and responsible, or even, respectful to themselves, adults or other students, if they can't have any empathy towards them. And so I went down, got this book, read it. It's flagged, it is underlined, it has Post-it notes in it. It is probably one of the best books I've read, and you find it actually in the parenting section. And but it has pieces in there of how you can translate that into a school setting. And so my big push this year was empathy. How do we teach empathy? And so when you develop empathy, those are the 4 main things when you develop it. You have emotional literacy. It's really about how are they going to figure out emotions for themselves and others. Moral identity, who they are and what they stand for. Perspective taking, can you stand in somebody else's shoes? And moral imagination, which means that taking from literature, what are you learning inside of that? And then to practice that is self-regulation. Can they regulate themselves? Can they figure out how to control themselves in a classroom? Can they figure out how to control their behavior out on the playground? practicing kindness, collaboration, working together. And then to live it, you need moral courage. How do you stand up for what you believe in? And how do you stand up for somebody else? And that's what that altruistic leadership ability is how do you stand up for somebody else as well? Not just for yourself, but how do you say, you know what you said to that person or what you did to them wasn't okay. And so I looked through those and went, that's a big list. And I needed something to help me with how do you even show what empathy looks like? We can say it. That's what Love and Logic is about, using empathy when you speak to children. So what I learned, some of the things that I took away from this book and I'm using it at school now, is that we want kids not to be bystanders, but upstanders. We want them not just to stand back and say, it wasn't me, but I didn't say anything when somebody else was being hurt or bullied. So how do you stand up for yourself and for somebody else? So we teach them to use their voice. You say, instead of running to an adult right away, you have to stand there and say, please don't do that. I don't like that. Can you please stop? That's what we're trying to teach them as a first step. Did you tell them that? And sometimes we even have to pull kids together. So out on the playground, you'll see two kids. Did you tell them what you didn't like? No. Tell them what you didn't like. Did you understand? Yes. Are you going to do it again? No. Maybe. No. So the other thing is watching, helping, doing. So children's empathy is sparked by active face-to-face experiences and not lectures. Mm-hmm. And what they also say in here is that cell phone activity reduces empathy, because kids don't do face-to-face. They don't have any relationships or deep contact or deep connections with even their own friends. All of that stuff is done on a cell phone. And when you start that at a really young age, and I see kids in 3rd grade with cell phones, they lose the ability to feel sorry for somebody, because if you're doing it behind a screen, you really don't see what somebody's expression looks like if you hurt their feelings. Empathy stems from relationships and connections. So if we can't make relationships and connections with students, everybody on campus, student to student and adult to student, then we are at no point are we going to teach those children empathy. So it is a big deal for us to connect with kids, to connect not only with the kids who have issues, but those kids who we think are okay, but in the end we find out maybe they're not okay, because every child has a story and none of them are perfect. The empathy gap, which means the higher the anxiety level and stress, the less empathy is felt. So when a child is anxious, when a child is stressed, they are only thinking about themselves. They are not thinking about somebody else. So we need to make sure that we're reducing anxiety and stress within the school. The counselor, that is a huge deal. The student success coordinator, all of the people that we have on site as support staff are amazing. The PE teacher, she's teaching yoga at this point. So we're teaching all of these mindful activities to make sure that kids can really reduce their stress and anxiety. Character-focused praise, growth mindset. What they're saying, what this book says through some research, is that we are praising children, but we're praising them wrong. So instead of saying, you did a wonderful job, or, you did a great job, that was fabulous, you can end up saying, you tried, you did your best, how can we improve on that? So there's a way of making kids understand that they're not perfect and that it takes time and experience and all those other things to be successful. And then the ability to manage emotions is a better predictor of academic achievement than IQ. And so if you cannot manage a child's emotions, there's no way that you're going to be able to teach them anything in the classroom. And we know that as classroom teachers, that if you've got a kid who can't sit still, can't stop moving, can't, he's not learning. And so we need to make sure that we are helping students manage their emotions with the self-regulation. So what I then did was, I have talked about this book over and over and over again, and one day I had spoken to Deb about it, and she said, have you heard of Rachel's Challenge? And I said, I have not. And she said, you need to Google it. And I did. And, and I brought Rachel's Challenge to Ukiah. This is about Rachel J. Scott. These handprints were actually found behind her dresser. She was the first person killed at the Columbine High School shooting. And so she left 6 journals. She talked about kindness. She talked about starting a chain reaction. She talked about how do you show compassion to somebody else. And one of her main things, not only was it to everybody, but she also went out of her way to make sure that kids with special needs were shown compassion. And so this is the two quotes came directly out of her journal. This was behind her dresser. A year later, they decided to clean out her room finally. And the way Rachel's Challenge started was they pulled this out, and behind her dresser were her hands. And right there in the hands, it said, these hands belong to Rachel Joy Scott and will someday touch millions of people's hearts. And so what her parents said was, we'll make sure her dream comes true. So, Rachel's Challenge, and by the way, as I was doing this, I realized that today is the 18th anniversary of the Columbine shooting. So, her life and death has inspired her family to continue her hopes and dreams of creating a kind and compassionate world. It's a nonprofit organization. It's K-12, and they cater to whatever grades you want. So, and it has an anti-bullying message to it, but instead of them saying don't, what they're saying is, what does kindness and compassion look like, and how can you exude those things? And so I'm just gonna, I have a little short 2-minute clips just so you can get a feel for what Rachel's Challenge is.
Can we pause it for a minute so we can get the sound?
Ian, pause it. Please. There you go.
Teenage bullying and teasing is an epidemic in this country, and the death rate is climbing.
There have been high-profile cases in every corner of the country.
You know, I see these kids in schools every day. So many of them are from broken homes. So many of them are from homes where they go home and see drug abuse. They see alcoholism. And for them, their lives are filled with hate and anger and fear.
I really wanted to kill myself because I was so miserable.
I was like, what is it? He said, well, I can't really describe it to you. And he said, what they're doing is they're doing presentations in schools all over the country. The story that they're telling is making a tremendous impact.
kids used to have issues with each other, now they're high-fiving each other. Things are changing.
You see kids who put walls up, and that comes down, and you get to see the real person. And I think that was really important for all the kids to see. And they start looking around, and they start seeing other kids, really seeing them for the first time and understanding they're just like me. I'm not alone in this world. And I mean kids that on the day we showed up, they were thinking about pulling the plug. They were done. They were hopeless.
I had everything planned out, and I actually had a rope and pills in my bedroom waiting for me when I got home.
It didn't matter what the reason was, but they were hopeless. They needed something. And Rachel was that something.
We get hundreds of letters every year from students, and I remember reading one that just brought me to tears of a 10-year-old girl who had an exact plan to end her life. But at the end of the letter, she said, "Rachel, you saved my life."
And so many adults I meet, they'll say our kids today, they're lost. You know, they don't have respect. They need to have more rules. And they keep telling kids what they can't do. I see kids that are dying to have someone say, here's what you can do. Here's how you can make a difference in the world. Here's your value.
The issue isn't just about ending bullying. It's much deeper than that. It's about connecting with students, having them connect with each other. They need to feel accepted, wanted, loved, appreciated. We all do.
Our kids today are dying to know they're not alone. They're dying to know that they matter and that they're cared about. It's about having compassion, that they have a story, and having other students realize that when they see this person as a bully, that that's just one layer to that. That this isn't something that defines them at all. Since Rachel's challenge arrived, you can feel, you can see, you can taste the difference.
We found that there's been a decrease in the number of bullying taking place in the school as a result of Rachel's challenge.
And Rachel's story was that huge thing for them that made the difference, that helped them turn the tide. They went from hopeless to hopeful that not only their life would mean something, but that they can make a difference in someone else's life. That's the magic of Rachel's story.
And so you can have Rachel's Challenge come to your school, and it's modified based on the grade. And so we did 2 at our school. One of them was a K3, and the K3 just talked about a friend named Rachel and how she wanted everybody to be kind and what she did to make sure that everybody was kind, and they talked about her in the present tense. They never once talked about her in the past tense. When you got into the upper grades, they knew that she had died. They weren't quite sure of the reason why, but they knew that she wasn't around because of something that had happened to her because others were not kind to her. And what I saw when I did this, especially with my upper grade students, was something really amazing to me. I'm extremely passionate about making sure that kids are loved and welcomed at school. I think that is the foundation of education, and you can't get them to learn math or reading without it. And I sat there, and we had 2 different assemblies, and then we had another hour of where we sat and talked as I just had 5th and 6th grade in this one. And we sat and talked about what it was that made us empathetic, what it was, what some of us really thought it looked like to need somebody. And he told his story, and then he asked kids to come up to tell theirs. And we sat there, and he said, "They'll do it, Dana. They will." And I had the most popular boy in school stand up and be the first one to walk up there, and all of the kids just kind of watched him. And he stood there and said, he talked about his parents' divorce. He talked about how scared he was for his little brother. He talked about how it scared him, how he didn't know what to do. And he sat in front of 120 kids, and he cried. And that brought up more kids to tell their story. And the impact that he had, because he wasn't the face of every kid that was there. So every kid that walked up there was not who I was like, that kid needs to go up there. That kid's got a story. That kid should be talking. Not one of those kids that I knew the story of got up there and spoke. Every kid that got up there and spoke had a message and a story that I didn't know about, not to the depth or to what I thought really concerned them. And so that showed the kids that they're not alone, that even the most popular boy in school, that cute athletic guy that they all just admire and follow, he has problems too. And he wasn't afraid to let everybody know. And that helped those other kids get up there and tell their story too. We also had an evening event and invited the community to that event so they could talk a little bit about Rachel's challenge as well. So what we've done with this is we've started something called the 4 Club, and it's Friends of Rachel. And here they are today because they were doing pinwheels for child abuse. And so they're a great group of kids, but I have every Thursday, 5th and 6th grade recess, they meet, and they have 2 teachers. They have a kinder teacher and a 5th grade teacher who stand there and just kind of watch to make sure everything's okay. But they are the students who are all about kindness and compassion. That's their job. And so they have roles and committees that they've done, and there's a whole program. Part of it is based on Marzano's. So we have teacher things that, teacher lessons based on Marzano, because Marzano and Daryl Scott, who's Rachel's dad, they lived 15 minutes from each other and didn't know it, but respected each other greatly. When they find out how close they were, he's like, this is a wonderful story. He's like, wow, you do this. And so they wrote a whole program based around social emotional learning. And we it was $6,700 to bring them here, and for the night for all 3. And we had the Bradford Foundation, First Baptist Church, and PTA all funded it, so it all came out of donations. They have the 4 club leaders. The leaders actually run the club. The teachers don't. They have a historian who keeps a journal, like Rachel, so they keep kind of like a scrapbook journal. They have project participation. So there is a group of members who are trying to get out there, not only to have their members do things, but people who are not members, because it's only a 5-6, so we're trying to get leaders in the upper. But they go down to the lower grades and talk to them and want them to be friends of Rachel and things like that. We have a marketing committee, and these guys hang posters around school to create an atmosphere of kindness. We have the CIA, and those are the compassion and action students. They actively seek out kids who are having issues and then actively try to help them in that moment in time, like during recess, because all 500 of my students go out at the same time. And so they are all over the place trying to help students who need it. And they're getting better at it. And really, they're not going in as a leader. They're going in as just another kid. Like, can I help you? Is there a problem? That kind of thing. And then they try to do these random acts of kindness on a daily basis. Your doors are open for you. Hello, I love your shirt. I have like 300 kids who love my shirt every single day, especially first graders. They have a welcoming committee, so they welcome new members to the 4 Club, but they also have this thing that if a new kid comes to our school, they have a whole program that they have in place to welcome a new student, how they walk them around, how they show them things, friends that they have. You're our friend, you can be part of the club. If not, you can find us, we'll help you. We also have a meeting facilitator who keeps the leaders on track. And then the attendance taker is a boy who had such issues. He is now the attendance taker, and by gosh, he's serious about it. And that's what he does. And every Thursday he's there, which is really nice because most of the time he spent a lot of time in the Student Success Center, my office, a lot of different places. So this is really good for him. The progress, well, they've established membership. They've drafted a club code. They've assigned roles and committees. They made pinwheels. They have a hallway hello campaign that they're starting. And they are starting the chains of kindness. So every time somebody does something kind, we make chains. And so we're going to see how long the chain goes. And then this is just what they did today. So if you need an affirmation, if you need somebody to tell you that you're absolutely amazing, this sits right outside my door. They use my thing, an affirmation is, and then they put these down there. They made them all, and she typed them up, and she put them in there, and you can pull one out, and you can say, I am wonderful today, or you've got on nice shoes, or something like that. But so they do this, and then so that's Rachel's Club for us, and we are slowly putting that into place. I don't like to bombard. I like to see the pieces that work, the pieces that don't work. So what we're doing, we're continuing our work in all those other areas. We're trying to reach out to the community. Our 100s Day project this year was based on we gave to, I want to say committees, but that's not charities. That's my word. So each grade level had to pick a charity, and they donated to that charity 100 things or more. So like we donated 100 Band-Aids, but it ended up being 100 boxes of Band-Aids to hospice. They said they might not ever need a Band-Aid again. We did food and toys to like the animal shelter, things like that. So each grade level did something. Kinder did something very nice, but it was easy. They all wrote hearts or thank yous for Valentine's Day and gave them to the elderly at the rest homes. We're still continuing Rachel's challenge and seeing the pieces that we need and the pieces we might not need. So what pieces go together, what makes it cohesive and not just these different million pieces that we do. We're working with outside agencies. What are we going to do? We're going to continue our work. One of those things in that Unselfie book was self-regulation. So we are going to build an app for self-regulation because we can't find one we like. So we're in the process of looking at how to build an app. We have something called Yes TV we're trying to work on, which is Ukiah Elementary School. But it is also, yes, this is how you stand in the line. Yes, this is how you raise your hand. Yes, and there'll be little short video clips that we're taking of kids to put up, so if teachers want to use them to say, this is how you walk in a line, and then you show it for 5 seconds. So we're working on Yes TV. I want Roots of Empathy, but they are working in Oakland and are not coming up towards Ukiah anytime soon. It is where you have babies come into the classroom, and they sit in the middle of a circle, and then the the kids are trying to figure out why that child feels the way that they do. So that was just one thing. And then we're always working on a wellness center for our school. So that's my presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
I don't know if I have a question, but I'm just so excited. It's just lovely, and I know how hard it is to pull all this together, and I really appreciate the fact that you're approaching it from so many different angles at once, because we all learn differently, we all experience things differently. So it's fabulous that you're not just doing Rachel's Challenge, and you're not just doing something else, but they're all woven, and I just think that's fabulous. My favorite app is iChill. So it's small I and then the word chill.
Okay.
And so check that one out.
All right, thank you.
I do love it took me a while to figure out the sign on the fence, the be kind, because I didn't know. I kept driving down there and saying, I have to call the office and find out. We should know what this Rachel's Challenge is, because it's, everybody's passing by. And then I saw the sign, be kind, and it's just a lovely way to express it.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dana.
Thank you.
That was very, very moving and nice to see what's going on at Ukiah. Every month, we have a list of donations, so I'm going to read those donations for this month. For Oak Manor School from Skate City, we have a donation. For all the elementary and middle schools, we have a donation from Cold Creek Compost. And for Frank Zeke School from North American Organics, we have a donation. So these 3 donations this month are totaling $1,684. So we're very appreciative of that. And do we have a motion to accept these donations?
I so move.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I'll second.
Okay, all in favor of accepting the donations?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right. So next, we have an update on our STEAM school.
Have a couple of slides.
And while you're getting set up, I just want to say thank you for all of the good work, and we're really excited to see things go next year. And I know the staff is totally enthusiastic, and the STEM night that was held, the students who were there were really excited, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen next year.
You're stealing a little bit of the thunder.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good news. So we're going to kind of tag team this a little. So, we're brief, but wanted to give you an update, which you had asked for every other month to get an update. So you got one in the board packet and here in person with some things to take a look at. So just kind of remembering what the purpose of the magnet school was, that we were looking at providing students and families with school choice as part of the strategic plan. We wanted to attract students to a school with capacity for increased enrollment to offset other sites that didn't have capacity, particularly Pomalita, that is basically at capacity, and particularly because of the acreage. You have about 200 more students than would be recommended in terms of the acreage. You have the building, but you don't want to be adding much more. So we wanted to attract students to Eagle Peak, and then also attract students in the area who have not been enrolled. So when we looked back at the data in the report, which I delivered back about a year and a half ago, you had 51 students at 7th grade that were leaving the district, and you had 38 at 8th grade. And so we're seeing that in these areas, attracting students were successful. So,
And that means you just get to pocket that money yourself, right?
no, you do.
So we really envision implementing and building the STEM school in multiple phases. Phase 1 really was the recruitment phase, and you're seeing a couple of artifacts up here on the wall. And our posters are actually coming down to board members to see. And there's been radio spots, et cetera. So phase 1 really was the recruitment phase. Phase 2 is the hiring phase. So as we're hiring, let's say, a social studies teacher, we're really looking for someone that also has a background in educational technology or some sort of STEM application, and that's who we've been recruiting. And the HR department has been awesome, traveling the state and nation actually to bring in folks who have STEM background. Of course, recruit for all of our positions in our district. Our school and HR talk daily, at least once, often more than once, about these folks, and we've made great progress bringing in folks with some STEM backgrounds and so on. So that's really phase 2. And then phase 3 is the planning portion, which involves developing the electives, developing the curriculum and the projects, et cetera. Let me give you a good example. Let me talk to you about the journey a little bit. As we started this off, we found that most secondary schools who were STEM schools, if you will, had the STEM electives. That's the primary place where students could receive the STEM. Well, as we collectively agreed that we want to keep music and so on in the master schedule, we still wanted to guarantee STEM. We still wanted to guarantee every student to have access to STEM. So then we realized we have to do that in the core classes: language arts, math, science, and social studies. So here's a good example. In 7th grade next year, the kids are going to read the book The Martian, the adolescent version that doesn't have all the bad words, right? And so in studying that book in a language arts class, of course, and doing the character analysis, you easily can tie into the social studies classes and look at the politics of space exploration and territory and so on, right? And then the math and science connections are obvious. So taking a book and doing projects and assignments within all the core classes adds the STEM element to those core classes. So Eagle Peak STEM will be school-wide for all kids at the core class level. Then you could join a club, you could take STEM, you could do STEM in the after-school program, you could take a STEM elective, you could join a competitive robotics club, let's say. So you can STEMinize, that's a new word, your schedule as much as you want. You can start with a baseline, and then you can just add pieces, like building a burrito at Chipotle, as much as you'd like. So that's kind of the approach we're doing. So there's going to be a handful of kids that do STEM all day long and all night long, et cetera, et cetera. So we're trying to do a lot of flexibility with the scheduling of it all. Next slide.
Okay, well, I think, let me do just a
Sure,
little bit
yes.
more on this, and that is, the posters that you're seeing, those were taken by one of the teachers on the leadership team. And kids at Eagle Peak. They took the pictures, they set it up, and they also did the wording for that. So that kind of is reflective of the quality of the staff involvement that we've had. Because basically went to them and to say, here's the challenge, here's what we have to do, and we need to work together, and we need you to be very actively involved in this. And they really rose to the challenge. So as far as the implementation of STEM, as Dan was describing, typically you'll start in the core and then you work in, and you'll have more into the core classes. They're doing that now. And so you had a demonstration of that. They're saying, what is something that, a unit that we're doing at a grade level, and then how can we all work together on that and integrate our curriculum so it's additive? And then what things beyond the school day can we do for that? So that's been exciting with them. So there's monthly meetings, there's an action plan, you also had that in your packet. There's lots of staff input, and then there's the staff leadership team that meets. So they're working on curriculum planning, collaboration, and what the teachers said is we don't want to wait, we want to do this now. And so they have been having meetings over the last 2 months and continuing so that we are going into this where there's a lot of planning and working together. And then they're looking at events and traditions and really wanting as much student engagement and student-led activities as possible in the approach. Right, I get this one too. So in terms of the enrollment, that when we started out with this, what we were looking at, and I'm looking back because there's lots of data in your study, that essentially you were going to have, between the time of the study in 2021-22, you're looking at 39 more kids at Pomalita and 38 more at Eagle Peak. What we wanted is for those kids to go to Eagle Peak because that's where you had space for them. You didn't have more room for more students at Pomalita. Starting out with the recruitment, you basically were already full at 7th grade, and 8th grade didn't have a lot of room. So we were recruiting most heavily in 5th and 6th grade for students to come in and then continue through. So overall, there are about 70 more students who were coming in. So at 5th grade, we have 11 students from Pomalita attendance area who are coming over. You have 5 students who are new to the district, either from a charter school, another school district, or a private school. 6th grade, you have 15 students from the Pomalita attendance area that are coming over, 7 students then that would be new to the district. 7th grade has been a little challenging, it's a bit in process, but basically it was already full before we looked at this. It was an unusually large class. But there were 11 students over, and there's a waiting list of 14 students, so it looks like another teacher. So Dan is very good with schedules and looking at that because you have more students wanting to come than we had space in our design. So we're looking at what do we do differently at 7th grade to accommodate that.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Sure. I'm confused by what full means. I mean,
So contractually full based on staffing. So, for example, right now, if we had 4 seventh grade teachers, which means you have room for 124 by contract, we have over 140 who are currently in sixth grade and will roll up to seventh grade next year. So it creates classroom overages and overfull classes and so on.
And so then at fifth grade, in the written report, it said there was 21 spaces open or something like that? So I guess I'm confused by that because that's like an entire class. So I'm not understanding. Are you adding a fifth grade but not adding a seventh?
We are most likely going to add a seventh as well, and are.
But that was not your original intention.
Not originally, because we were really targeting incoming fifth and sixth, but then 14 or 15 seventh grade students wanted to add on, and we were already over full.
I see.
Heading into next year's
So
seventh.
you had planned for another fifth and another sixth.
Correct.
You're going to end up with another fifth, sixth, and seventh.
Correct.
Okay.
And the 70 students who are coming who would not have come otherwise are from all over the place. There's not really any dominant group from one school. It's kids and families that really want to do STEM is the trend and way to describe it.
So it's not like you're having a mass exodus of everybody at Manor.
It's just a hodgepodge from all over the map. From south up, there's probably 8 to 10 Willits students at this point as well.
So you will take the seventh graders. You just have to figure out how to take them, but you're not
Yes.
going to send them back to somebody else.
No, we
Like
really
what?
finalized a good plan for that literally today to figure out how to
I
take
was
those
just going to
kids.
say that we are close to having a solution.
Okay.
Are there 14 students on the waiting list in seventh grade from outside the district?
It's a hodgepodge, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's probably
Some are.
5 or 6 or so, yeah.
So what is the total number of students at the fifth grade level?
So the total number for next year is over 100. It's like 104, 5, or 6, somewhere in there for next year.
All in the STEM program?
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, every student at Eagle Peak will be part of the STEM program. It's school-wide.
Okay, that wasn't clear. Thank you, yeah.
And the ability to ramp up or ramp down is your solution to a neighbor who lives across the street, but maybe isn't terribly interested in STEM.
Who is already in the enrollment, goes to Calpella, is in our
Correct.
boundary.
Right.
Yes, so they'll have that baseline.
Right.
And obviously, there's going to be days where you will be studying ancient Greece and not looking at the technology of the ancient Greeks. So there's still the traditional
Have a stone.
core things that have to
Yeah.
happen, and so, yeah, that's right. Okay, so for next steps, it's really to begin to design the curriculum of the electives and to continue to design curriculum that'll manifest in the core subject areas. And so we're sending folks near and far to trainings and so on, and also building in time during the summer voluntarily if teachers would like to come and work and prep and plan, and also time during the school year, also during the PLCs, et cetera. Really, that curricular design process is our third phase. Phase 4 is simply opening school as a STEM school, and then I think the 5th phase is really revamping and revising as we kind of go along. But one of the really interesting tricks about all of this is if we don't want the curriculum to be locked in place prior to hiring and learning what the skill set is of the new employee that we bring in, because these folks have some incredible technology backgrounds, so we want to kind of build upon their strengths within the electives and the core classes, et cetera. So we have a framework, if you will, but our new employees are going to contribute to the design of these courses.
So just as a reminder, there is a week during the summer before the school year starts so that you will have all of your staff on board, you will have gone to the conferences, and then there's that focus as far as that curriculum planning, putting everything together with all the people who will be there. And then the schedule has time for that ongoing collaboration and planning. Just to add to what Deb said, the staff is very excited about this opportunity and what they can do as a school and what they can provide for students and they have just embraced it and are running with it. So I think it's going to be pretty exciting because everybody is there. And I mean, we really heard that at our last meeting. It's like this, we are like over, we're running, and it's, we're getting a lot of enthusiasm from parents, a lot of parents that attended the event to find out about the school. So there's a lot of buzz and interest in the community. And I think thanks to the board who said, be sure you recruit. We were here at the last time. Make sure you do a good job in recruiting. And I think that they really have. And we're up and running, and it's be exciting to watch.
Thank you. Any questions?
I just, I think it's very exciting to have all these faculty trained in maker certification and things, because I just see that as a possibility for them to do summer school for other students who could, especially at-risk learners for whom it's been very successful in different programs. So I think that's very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, Dana did an awesome job talking about the heart piece, and in some ways, this is the mind piece. And so, you know, we know that when kids are highly engaged with their minds on project-based hands-on learning, that also helps behavior as well. So we've been saying it for a long time out at Eagle Peak. I wish we had more hands-on type of stuff, and this will obviously help.
Megan?
Sorry. I'm thrilled about this program. I'm so excited. It's so nice to see after so much sort of unhappiness in Redwood Valley around the difficult school decisions that were made. It's really exciting to see this solution that seems to be on its way to accomplishing what we thought. I know a number of very engaged parents that are going to Eagle Peak, so I just wanted to, might be a little bit of a change to have a concentration of like really intense parents there. So I'm assuming that like how to work with parents is going to be, you know, something you're going to have to build into your program, because I know some of them and I'm excited for you to work with them.
Yes.
Yeah. But that, I mean, that's to be expected with a magnet school type situation.
It's great when we have involved parents. And so, I mean, we have to raise we're raising expectations and raising the bar. And somebody told me the other day, man, you're gonna have to start working, Dan. And I'm working harder than I've ever worked, actually. So it's good. It's fun. It's fun. And we're actually to the really fun part, which is talking about the learning, the curriculum, the electives. I mean, that's not work. That's fun.
Anne?
I'd like to talk about what else you need. Like, I think about those 5 days that you have with your people before school starts, and I know that half that time is probably taken up with district-wide trainings and things like that. And since I love to spend money we don't have, I'm wondering if there's, if in order to help make this magnet school really effective and get off to a good start, is there a need to add in some other days or some other incentives for teachers?
So really good question and point. It's actually built in. We built in a voluntary extra week before all of that.
Okay.
And it was actually the teacher's idea. It was teacher generated.
It wasn't me
too.
saying it 6 months ago?
It could be that too. So it's built in the budget, and it was kind of the
great.
teacher's idea, saying, "Hey, let's go big or go home. We need to come in a week earlier and meet together within our grade level cohorts to plan additionally, and also a time to bring back all the learning that they've garnered from the conferences and trainings that they've all been to. So yes, we have a week built in, and everybody's excited about being there.
Good.
So I think also because the staff have embraced it so much, you are far ahead on your planning of where we thought you would be. Because they said, we can't wait. We want to do it now. So I think, really the school's in good shape, and the district has done a good job of supporting getting this to this point. I just wanted to add also, in talking with parents, there were a lot of parents who had children in special education and said, we want to make sure there's special ed at this school and that STEM is available to those students also. And so Dan has been working on that. And so it is, everybody is getting to do STEM and hands-on activities, and the special ed teachers then also spoke at the evening when the parents came to talk about what they would be doing in special ed. So it's school-wide, everybody.
So the classroom that was especially designed for children with autism, is that maintaining its residence at Eagle Peak?
It is maintaining its residence there, and the real critical piece in all of this for our children with IEP, especially with some severe learning challenges, is to train and support the paras who support those kids. So this last spring, or this last month or two, it involved training paras about how science fair works, because we wanted our students with disabilities to participate. So we had a number of sessions where we showed them all the concepts, how to modify, how to find experiments that were accessible to the kids, and so on. And so at our district science fair, 4 or 5 of our students with severe autism and very difficult challenges participate and had some great projects. So that's been a key piece for us, is para support.
Congratulations. Can the paras come back a week early as well if they, on a voluntary basis?
It's not built in the moment, but it's a good thing to discuss, especially as the classroom paras, and that's a really good question we'll look into with Katie and her team. Yeah.
Or it might be something that maybe they're better off going away to a conference in July that's particular for this. You might be so on the cutting edge of how to include children with special needs in a STEM magnet school. It's not like there's a lot of conferences on that topic, but, or maybe they could do a site visit or something. So anyway.
The great news is with most of the children with severe autism, they love the technology. That's actually what gets them sort of engaged and centered during their day. So it's been a real natural fit that we'll see continuing.
Yeah. Well, maybe we could talk about that at budget time, just to see if there's anything else, just to make sure it's successful. Thank you.
Gail?
I'm sure you're planning for it, but just in all the excitement of this, there will be some open slots left at each grade level for children who might drop in from that district, so that we're not busing somebody from Redwood Valley into town because there's no room.
Are we talking about in-town schools, or are we?
I'm talking about residents.
Oh.
We get families who move over the summer all the time, and so we just want to be sure that we have spots for that possibility.
Yeah, the enrollment has slowed in terms of the big rush that we had, and so, there's if we can add a teacher in 7th, that's going to make 7th okay. 8th grade, I think, will be fine, and there's a little room in 5th and 6th, so I would predict we'll be okay with 3, 4, and 5 slots. We'll have to see how it goes.
I thought the original brochure said that enrollment would be open until May 31st. Did I misread that?
It does say that, yes.
That was my question.
So that is our procedure. It is the board policy that it's open till May 31st. We will save some spots like we do at all schools for any neighborhood kids who come in the fall.
I guess my concern, though, is that Megan is talking about parents being already excited because they're assuming they're going there. But if enrollment's open for another whole month, what if you have 30 parents who next month come in? Have you already promised slots to parents? I thought we would not give slots away and then have a lottery if there were people over.
So we're not at that capacity yet, and when we get to that capacity, I would defer to Deborah, Katie, what the next step would be. Obviously, that's a good question.
But you're hoping to be able to accommodate anyone who's interested in 5th
So
and 6th.
Eagle Peak has not notified the parents or the families that they're in yet. So I know that there was a letter that is being generated that will go out, but we do have our policy on May 31st. We may want to revisit that policy.
It's kind of late.
Like we did with Grace Hudson. We had an earlier close date because we know that kids who opt into Grace Hudson, if they don't get in, they're going to go somewhere else. And so we may want to think about that for the future in terms of the board policy.
Megan?
That was my question. I wasn't clear if they were still enrolling, but it sounds like you are.
Okay. Anything else?
Great.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, next we have Jason Iverson, I believe, who's going to talk to us about school resource officer.
And before Jason starts, this concept came out of some of the participants in our district advisory committee meeting. a couple of meetings ago, we were sharing with them the data that we shared with you on attendance in the district, and we were looking at it by subgroup and everything else. And so one of our DAC members had an idea about how to possibly help us get more kids in school. And so that's kind of where this concept came from. And with that, I will let Jason take over.
So one of the things that we presented you guys with a lot of data at the mid-year report, and I know at times there was some concern that we didn't see more movement with attendance. So we went back and started looking at some different ideas, because one of the things that happens with attendance is as you start getting to that 94%, which we've sort of been at, then you're also looking at a really tough demographic and really difficult students and families that are having difficulties, and how do you get kids to school? So having been in charge of attendance at the high school for almost a decade and then here, and Deb has much the same similar background, we've studied lots of systems. Last year, for example, I went to the CASQA conference, got to see most all the model SARBs and attendance systems throughout the state of California, all the award-winning ones. One of the things that we've seen over the years is that all of those systems have 4 basic components to them, but only 2 of those components typically are built inside the school itself. The first one, I think, is what we're seeing here live from our first 2 presentations, is that you build schools that people want to come to. And I'm really proud of all the work that the board and administrators and people like Dan and Dan are doing, that you've added positions, that we've created that environment of schools that kids want to go to, doing things like adding those positions of liaison and counselor and all those, you know, wonderful programs we're talking about, and PBIS, and again, making those places welcome. So that's always level 1 of attendance, is creating those things. Level 2 then is, you know, what we do as administrators, working as a district and with a county. Typically, most systems, oftentimes with attendance with SARB and things, is run through the county. We have sort of held that flag ourselves as the district for all these years, running SARB and doing those things ourselves. Also doing things like creating positions. Years ago, having started on the SARB board almost 14 years ago, we, for the first several years I was on the board, we only had 1 or 2 elementary schools ever even come to SARB or bring kids. The longer I was on the board with several people, the thing that we noticed over and over again is that by the time they were getting to high school, these habits had happened long ago. And so we were concerned. So we have made changes as a district, like through a grant, we added a position of having a SARB secretary who then generates those letters for every site and making sure that kids throughout the district then are monitored. And we've done that over the years. We've also, again, added different positions and people in different ways of doing those things. So there's sort of equity. And so we are watching those things. The next level you come to after that, as you look at that administratively and how you set those things up, is working with your community partners. So the next level of all those different systems, the next level you see is working with social services, working with probation, working with police officers. And then the final 4th one would be working with the district attorney's office and the courts. So one of the things we've talked about is that sort of on that level 1 thing, we have done a fantastic job. I mean, the money you've spent, the things you've done for kids have been fantastic, adding liaisons. I think that, you know, on that level 2 system, you know, having people like me and Carolyn Johnson over the years, and our liaison goes out and tries to do those things. But I think also we saw a huge reduction from some of the boards that I sat on the early years, where we had Deputy Oral Massey was at every single meeting. If a parent didn't show up, he went out and got those. He was going and making home visits. All of our SARB contracts had his number on them. Families could call him, talk to him. We also had somebody from social services at every single meeting, talking to families about every services that was available, and we had those things throughout. We also had probation in those early years. But then, just like all systems and money and things, we saw, you know, the Financial Times hitting in 2007, 8, 9, and we started seeing those things go away. Deputy Massey, obviously, we saw what was happening with the county, and they could not spare him to do those things. Social services had some of those same issues, and so did probation. So it's been kind of tough at those sort of situations. We haven't put those back. We don't have somebody like Oral Massey out there again. The one thing schools are good at is when you get kids to school, we're good at dealing with them and doing those things and doing different projects with them, getting ideas and filling wonderful things in their head. But we're not always good at being able to go out in the community. I think after a while, you know, I have made, you know, probably 1,000 home visits over the years, but people see my face a lot of times. I can't write citations. I can't remove students from their homes when I see abuse. Those are things we need out in the community. So we started talking with some different ideas about what else we could do to bolster, especially as we're getting to that point where that 6% that we seem to be struggling with, that's sort of a whole nother level. So we're trying to think of different pieces that we could do and how we could address some of those things. So, as Superintendent Cuban talking about possibly having a school resource officer that focuses on attendance. I think also one of the things that needs to be talked about when you talk about attendance is a canary in the coal mine of everything that happens in kids' lives. Because when you start seeing the attendance fall, typically something is not going well at their home. So also having an officer do that, and at times Tony typically doesn't have a whole lot of time to do it. When he does, those are oftentimes those CPS cases we're getting. Those are those really tough things. The officer isn't out there just simply to be writing citations on those things. Those are welfare checks for kids because something's probably not happening very well at their home. And so that's part of what we're looking at in doing those things. Also, having a second resource officer would also help us with things like coverage. We don't always have them 5 days a week that we have them 4, or if someone's off, or to be able to help out with those different places. Again, it's a very encompassing job being a school resource officer, especially one that we'd be having focus on attendance. And the idea, again, is to try to get those kids to school so they can have some of those wonderful things that Dana was talking about and Dan was talking about.
And from a learning perspective, that's obviously a great thing. When we get kids coming to school, especially at the elementary level. I mean, high school is a little bit of a different story, but our kindergartners, sometimes they don't have a choice as to whether or not they come to school. It's more of a family issue. And so we really want to work there. When we did the analysis, so there's the learning piece of it, obviously, and engaging kids in schools and engaging families with resources. The financial piece of it is for every 1% that we are below 100% average daily attendance, we lose $484,000. And so we're at 94%, multiply 484 times 6, and we're over a $2 million loss. And so our thought was next year, if we can add a resource, an officer in to help us get kids to school and connect families with resources, just one more piece of that team, we will likely pay for the position through the ADA that we recover, plus some is our hope, that we would, obviously there's a learning piece, but there's also we believe very strongly that we can get that position paid for through what we would recover financially. If you look at our attendance over the last 3 years, it's pretty flat, even though we have added a lot of resources in. We're hovering around 94%, and we have been for the last 3 years. And so this is just one more strategy to add in and try. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But as Jason said, he can visit homes. Our counselors can visit homes. It's not the same as having an officer do a home visit and be part of that team. So we're asking the board to authorize this. It connects with our plan. It would just enhance what we're doing. It's one more strategy that we can try next year to help get kids to school.
Okay, do we have questions? Right. Gail?
A quick one. I was just disappointed, or I would have liked to have had a sample job description or some kind of list of what this person would be doing, just so that when people ask us in the community, we have ways to explain it. So maybe at some point in the future, if we approve this, you could provide
So
that.
we also have Chief Dewey here. And so in having Chief Dewey here, we have talked about those things and what are some of the roles and ideas and looking at those things. We also have looked at models at places like Richmond and different things. Again, we're looking at that 6% that we've struggled with. And we know at times you have to look at some ideas and different models, because that's a really tough percentage to get. And that's what I felt we were kind of tasked with, looking at the mid-year report and trying to try something new.
Tyler?
So just to follow up on Gail, exactly what would the officer be doing?
So, Chief Dewey, do you want to come on up? Because I don't want to overspeak for you. We've talked about these things, but I certainly don't want to overspeak for you or make promises that you don't think you can keep. Especially because you have a gun.
I think that, first for the job description is that I think that this is a work in progress, and sorry to start there, but really, instead of focusing on high school kids, I think the idea is really that we've talked about is focusing from kindergarten and then working our way up and really looking at the low-hanging fruit. Who can we get back into school early so that when they are to high school, they've learned the good habits and what to do? And so taking an officer, first off, I should explain, as an officer is really unique. A police officer, a typical police officer like myself, I can enforce the penal code. And a teacher and administrators have the education code. There's only one person in Mendocino County that can do both, and that's right now Tony Delapo. And Tony Delapo is certified to both utilize the education code and the penal code. So he has a much greater toolkit available to him.
Who is he?
Our school
Yeah.
resource
High
officer.
school. Oh.
Our school resource officer.
Oh.
And we send him to a 2-week school. He learns the basics. That whole 2-week is really an intensive course on the education code and how to apply it as a police officer. So to answer your question is that I guess what we envision is that a new officer starting to work with SARB, with the student teachers, with the counselors and the students and the teachers, and then finding ways, solutions that we can get kids back into the classroom. And then at the last resort, to use enforcement methods if we have to. But really, that's the idea of the job description that we're looking for.
The other piece, too, that we have been missing is that on our SARC contract has been Deputy Massey's number. Parents call, and this year, for the first time, he's completely retired. This year, it happened fairly suddenly. So we still have parents calling, wanting Deputy Massey there. We don't always have an officer to be sending for those families. Again, we'd be targeting our kids, but when it comes to parents having real struggles, those parents who want to get their kids there, oftentimes are asking for an officer and some of those things too. And we don't have that available the same way we have throughout the years. It has faded a bit throughout the years based on his schedule and things, but he certainly would take calls and do that whenever he could. And that can be very powerful for a parent to have an officer come to help support them with their child, especially when child would be very, very difficult. Because one of the things that happens in the SAR board and that we have seen over the years is that, the approaches are very different with younger kids and older kids. And there becomes a point where parents really want their kids to go to school. But when a 15, 16, 17-year-old becomes defiant, it becomes very, very difficult. And that's where oftentimes parents are asking to have that officer and they need that help. And I think that's a piece we just have typically always had, and we don't have that, and we haven't had that. And I don't think it's something necessarily the public always saw, because oftentimes when we look at SARB, these aren't always the people that you're dealing with all the time. These are the people oftentimes who are struggling with their students and kids, but these are also the kids we need to reach the most, that education is going to benefit the most, because oftentimes we're going to get those things at school and not necessarily at home. So that's always a deep concern for me, having been on that board for so many years.
Can I get
May I ask one more? Sure. Jason, you mentioned 4 points. You kind of broke up the idea into 4 points. Part of it is an additional school resource officer. But the other part you mentioned was the DA's office, and I'm wondering, how do we make that part of our team, or what are the really effective systems that you saw? Where is that component? How does this work into that? How do we get all those pieces together?
So I have met with the DA's office before, and I met with them again at the beginning of this year. I think without adding a serious position, I also think that actually having an officer be able to walk those cases through, that's part of what Chief Dewey and I have talked about, is that the possibility of having his officers who are used to walking cases through the penal system could be extremely helpful in that case, and can be really beneficial. Do you want to talk about that piece more?
Like any organization, the district attorney's office is understaffed and overworked, just like every other one. And when what we find the most effective is that when we have a case that we need to walk through, is having the officer going over and meeting with the district attorney or the assistant district attorney, and then seeing that case from start to finish, really is probably the most effective way. If we just submit a case, it's likely to sit on a desk with 70 other cases, and I think that's some of the struggles we've had in the past. And so the idea of a second resource officer would allow that person to navigate the court system and to work with probation or the district attorney or a student or a school counselor to figure out what's the best appropriate, or the SAR board to figure out the most appropriate actions to take.
And would the district attorney's office, I mean, in the perfect, in the real positive models that you've seen, I know we're talking about extreme cases here, but would the district attorney's office actually have somebody working with the SAR board directly?
So if you want to talk about model SARBs are typically all the same. I was talking about the four components you see in those strong systems. Model SARBs, for example, the Grossmont won the award last year for the state of California, San Diego County area. You had the district attorney of San Diego County along with his two assistants. They're kind of leading the whole meeting along with the county office, social services and all those pieces. So schools and school districts were almost kind of a small piece of it. It's very much the community looking as this is how we support our community and how we support our schools. So it's kind of a backwards model almost kind of from what we're doing here.
Jason, is the DA present at SAR meetings?
At our SAR meetings? No, we have not had a DA present.
But in the successful.
Yeah, you're talking about, the model SARBs, typically they're.
Has he ever been present in the last 5 years?
I think they sent an assistant DA about 4 years ago for a couple days. We've had sporadically an assistant DA show up for a couple meetings here and there over the last several years. I think really since Susan Massini, we didn't have somebody consistently, but we've had maybe, two, sitting down. I can remember about 8-10 years ago, there was 2 cases maybe the last time.
And are they consistently invited, or have you given up on inviting?
No, I went this year again and met with them again. I'll keep showing up.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. I
Sure.
have a bunch of questions too.
Okay.
By the way, Megan, there is now an assistant DA actually from LA County who just came up, who is familiar with SARB that I met with and talked to. So he's not unfamiliar with the process.
Okay, how about if you have a lot, let's have B first.
I wanted to say, I really like the idea of starting young. I think that's really important. It's a great habit to get into. Do you have anyone in mind? I know you don't have a description yet, but the fear for me would be that it's just a totally new position. You bring a new person in who's a wonderful person, but has never done this, and that could start off not as helpful as we would like.
So when we select a school resource officer, we always involve the schools in that selection process, and we usually do an oral board type testing process. It's a competitive testing process. I always have a number of officers that are interested. Just a couple facts on that I think are important to mention. The $90,000 pays for a brand new beginning officer for the department. So I would backfill and hire a brand new officer, and that's just their salary and benefits. It doesn't include overtime, training, vests, equipment, a car, none of that stuff. It's just the basic cost. Typically, the officer that's assigned to the school, or at least for the last 20 years, has been an extremely experienced officer. They're really highly sought out positions. It's a day schedule, weekends off. They get a salary incentive to be part of it. They get a 5% salary incentive to do that assignment. So, it's competitive for the person that does it, and it's equivalent to a detective level position within the department.
I also want to comment how much I've appreciated UPD. I was on the panel. They made sure I was on the panel. They spent a lot of time talking with me. If it's not working, they're extremely responsive if I have concerns. So I have a certain trust in the department for their demeanor and the way they have handled those things, and I think if there's problems, they'll address those problems and address them quickly. You know, obviously with Chief Dewey, but Captain Wyatt on down over the years have been very, very responsive to our concerns. And I think that's also why we like working with UPD so much is we do have that sort of trust and relationship that has been worked out.
No, I agree. Thank you.
Megan?
Thanks. I have a number of questions, but I wanted to start so that I'm not misunderstood. I really appreciate the partnership with Ukiah Police Department, and I think I'm really grateful that we're in a school district that has such a close and positive relationship with our police department. I feel like we've really benefited, and our kids have really benefited, so I'm really grateful for that. That being said, I'm not on board with this concept, and so I just wanted to explain what my thoughts were on some of the questions. I'm totally comfortable spending money on attendance. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor, so it's not about the cost. And if you know, $90,000 to potentially net at least $90,000 makes sense to me. But when I step back and I'm thinking and I'm looking at this data, and I see that it's been flat, our attendance has been flat, the questions that are coming to my head are, why are our family community liaisons and our school counselors and the staff that we put into this, why are we not seeing the results that we thought? And is it that they're doing the work and it's not being successful? Or is it that they're being pulled into other duties so they're not doing the hands-on work with the kindergarten parents that they had wanted to do in order to improve attendance and have those kinds of connections with the parents? I just don't know. I don't have the data in front of me to know whether, or I'm not sure if the district has really delved down to see why were the original kind of strategies we put into place, we're not seeing the results yet. So that concerns me. It also makes me wonder, are we seeing results in some area? Like maybe we have improved attendance for certain children and certain families, but there's something else going on in our community, maybe related to immigration, that we have a different pool of kids that are starting not to come to school at the same rate. I don't know whether that's true. I could be making this up. But it could be, again, I think that's important data to look at when we're really trying to figure out why we haven't been successful. So those are thoughts in my head. I'm having a little bit of a disconnect with the concept that law enforcement strategy, that kind of approach, matches with low kindergarten enrollment. There's no legal requirement you send your kid to school before they're age 6. My sense from the little bit of research I've done is that there's a sense that school's not really important, and kids do literally get sick a lot when they're in 4- and 5-year-olds. So that match there is not clicking in my mind, that a law enforcement officer showing up your door as a kindergarten parent. It doesn't match in my head, but I could be wrong about that, but that's why I'm having a little bit of a disconnect there. I feel like full-time seems like an awful lot. I mean, our schools are really lucky. We have all these breaks, we have all this summer. It's a great gig for a police officer. I would completely want the job if I was a police officer, but I'm not sure if it doesn't match with what I'm perceiving as the need. I could see something like contracting for 20 days of an officer's time on the days that we really need, as you pointed out, the enforcement presence where you kind of want to be there with your like law enforcement hat on. If I'm thinking of who in my community provides community resources for families struggling, I don't think of police officers. I think of social workers. I think of family community liaisons. I think of the kind of community agencies you referred to. So it's not matching in my head right now. So I'm not totally on board with paying for a full police officer, but I'm willing to continue to explore the concept and see how it works. I also am frustrated with what I think seems to be the lack of interest from the district attorney's office. I don't know if that's totally the right characterization, but if it's not a priority for the district attorney, then we as a board need to be more forceful about saying it is a priority in our community. And I don't know if it would be appropriate, but could we invite a district attorney or his representative to come to a school board meeting to explain to us why it hasn't been a priority for them?
I think we should speak.
But I don't know if that's an appropriate behavior, but I feel like keep inviting him, you keep working, and I don't know what's actually going on, but I would love to have that open, honest, direct conversation with the district attorney, and if it's, rather than just keep being kind of frustrated and confused, although you're pointing out that it's about a workload issue, but it's about a priority issue, and it is a priority for us. It doesn't appear to be a priority for the DA's office. let's have that conversation openly. This is not, this is
No,
outside of your scope.
I
but I'm
understand.
just- But I'm just,
Right.
that would be one avenue I would be interested in exploring.
But I also think that, just to be fair to what Chief Dewey was talking about with the DA's office, is that I also think it's problematic if you don't have officers involved at those levels. And that was very clear at all the model SARBs, because as Chief Dewey was talking about, is that we're, as school people, not good at walking cases through or making cases the same way as if you had a police officer. So it's very much game-changing to have that sort of piece. And if you're an assistant DA and a police officer's handing you a case, and they did the case, it's a lot different than if a school official said, hey,
And that
here's
makes
what I
sense to
did.
me.
And that, I think, that's another piece also. And then also, again, getting social services involved, because we're not having them at meetings either.
Which they should be, and we should be talking to the director of the Health and Human Services Agency about that.
She never shows up anywhere.
But I do think, that point is well taken, in that if there's a specific role, that part about where law enforcement makes sense, that resonates with me. So
Right.
that's why I'm thinking, is there a way to accomplish that without paying for a full-time officer? 'Cause
But
that-
Megan, I also wanted to reach out, because I get your point about the kinder. I think one of the things is that we do family SARBs, and these are family situations. So I think it's not always just that we're targeting kindergartners. I don't want to give that impression. I know that was talked about how important it is, but certainly, obviously, the older siblings not going and what happens with that.
But your
and-
data is showing, you're right.
Yeah,
your
and
data's
creating a
showing
bad
kindergarten.
environment as well. So, I think that point well taken, though, on that piece as well. So, I'm concerned.
Did you?
I just had one more thing too, and Jason talked about this. I think my perspective is I've been in other districts and I've seen model SARBs. I've seen attendance increase, and they all involve law enforcement. It's part of the team. And so I would just urge us to give it a try. And Jason talked about the 4 components. Richmond is effectively using a similar model. In San Diego, where I worked, that was the model. There were all the components working together, and it was very effective.
So, Megan, along with that is things like daytime curfews. So Richmond, a lot of are using police officers and having daytime curfews as well, so they enforce those things.
What does that mean?
Meaning that during school hours that kids can't be walking around, that's against the law, so then you could use that as enforcement. Now, they're not going around writing a ticket for every kid, but then it creates a sense of deterrence. Obviously, after warnings and those things, then they would step in and cite students as well for those things. But again, kind of creating that sense of deterrence, because I think the tough piece is that is tough is, we're talking about 6%, that's very difficult. Our SARB board has usually around 16 SARBs a year. We actually have more than twice as many as we did years ago. We've really tried to step those things up, especially as our demographics have fallen, and obviously those things changing and more families needing help, and the schools seeing that. So, we're seeing around 125, 130 cases, and, you may have between 1 and 6 kids. So starting on the math there, we're seeing a lot of kids. We have a lot of kids who have a very difficult situation in getting to school. And that 6% is tough. And by the end of the year, certainly we could see more if obviously we go into the summer, depending on who has 3 letters and having a difficult time at the end of the year. So again, we're talking about trying to reach that tough section of kids, that 6% that is very difficult to reach. And also, having been on the board for a lot of years, is that we're seeing those same families, and they've seen us. I've been to their door a lot over the last years. They know me obviously by first name, or that I have no enforcement. And I think those things become tough. And I know that administrators have also started getting very frustrated over the fact that it's those same families over and over again, and they can't get their kids to school because we're talking about that tough 6%. We're not talking about some of those other pieces that we normally would be. And I think that's why we're kind of thinking a bit out of the box and want to try something a bit different than we have, because we are talking a bit of a different group.
Ann?
Pete?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Is the current resource officer bilingual?
No, he's not.
Can you give me a day in the life of that current resource officer? Because what I'm wondering is I don't hear about many arrests that happen at the school. I haven't heard about that many fights. So I'm not sure on how he's spending his time now. But I do remember that it was 4 days a week.
Right.
And so one issue is I'm kind of interested in entertaining a possible possibility of making that 5 days a week, but anyway, that's
Okay.
kind of a side issue.
So, do you want me to start? And then you can. I mean, obviously, I worked with resource officers for years outside of the high school. So it's everything from me calling Tony over because we're having a custody issue at a school. 2 parents showed up. We have a restraining order. It is making a home visit because we're worried about some issue that the kid's having or that the kid is coming home with, making a welfare check. It is, going out at times with our toughest kids that we do have them make home visits at different times. It is making citations. It's going out and doing grip. It's going and making presentations. One of the fun things is I just got back from the foster youth conference, and I took 2 of the counselors with me. And I was kind of surprised because one of the first things that came out of Stephanie Page's mouth was how much she liked the new resource officer and how much she had called them to come with some of their difficult kids and to talk with them and help them out with some of the situations they were having at home, and some custody battles and those sorts of issues as well. We are constantly calling him at different sites. There's 6,000 kids here, so I think that, oftentimes we don't hear those things. For example, we didn't have a couple kids tonight. There was some difficulty, actually, the Boys and Girls Center. I mean, things like that, where it's constantly contact. Nicole, you're talking to him probably every other day, just the way I am, over different cases and things as well. I think there's so many small little things that he's doing that I definitely think, you and I can see that on a constant basis, or parents calling, needing help, or what's happening with a situation with probation or those pieces as well. Would you like to add something? Obviously, searches, things like that, having the dog, drug situations. Also at the high school, one of the things you have too, and at the middle schools, when we're talking about drugs, he's constantly evaluating students. I mean, many of the cases, things we see is evaluating students and the deterrence that it creates, evaluating students into drug situations.
Evaluating whether or not they look like they're high.
Whether or not, or also verifying whether or not those drugs are. I mean, obviously you've seen, I have brought you all kinds of different drugs and pieces and things over the years that you're not
Could we
sure.
rephrase that? You've never brought me.
I'm sorry, Ed, I will work on that. That was good. Yeah. You want to address that as well?
That's good.
I'll just add a couple of things. Our school resource officer has an office at the high school, and he'll come to the station in the morning and check in, but his job assignment is at the high school. That's where his desk is, his computer, where he does his job on a day-to-day basis. Besides his 40 hours he spends at the high school, he's at every dance, he's at every football game, he's at every special event. All of that overtime expenses, we as a department pay for. You as a school district don't pay for. His dog, we pay for. The training for that, we pay for.
We don't feed the dog.
On a typical day-to-day basis, every principal has his phone number. He's required to answer his cell phone. Even when he's on vacation, on his days off, he answers his cell phone. He just does. I think that the school resource officers think of the high school and the other schools as their beat, and they become very protective. They want to do a job. Typically, if the school resource officer will hear that one of the other officers is handling a problem involving a student, the school resource officer will call on the radio and say, "I'll be right there, I'll take that." I brought the numbers this last year. We responded to the schools in the Ukiah Unified School District 684 times. And so you might not have heard in the newspaper this big story or that big story, but it kind of shows the workload that the officers do on a day-to-day basis, is that they're constantly involved with stuff. We do encourage our officers not to make arrests, and so you don't see that as often as we want to have them resolve the situation at the lowest possible level to keep the kids in school, and that's a big part of the philosophy of the officer. It differs from a patrol officer.
I also think one of the things that Stephanie was talking about too was how nice it was that parents wanted to talk to the officer as well, and that the kids were very comfortable.
I just wanted to go back to one of Megan's points. It's really answers part of your question as well. Is I can't cut a person in half, and And having a part-time person just doesn't work. I have to send a school resource officer off. He has to be certified to be able to apply both the government code and the education code. You can't have a part-time person do that. There's a whole bunch of search and administrative law requirements that go with that. He needs to be assigned as a school resource officer. That has to be his full-time primary function in order to apply both the penal code and the education code. The other officers can't do that. The other officers cannot apply the education code. They can't come on campus and magically flip a switch and say, okay, for the next hour, I'm a school resource officer and apply the education code. Case law, and they won't allow us to do that.
Chief Dewey, you did say that other officers have been involved in your schools, and that's why the school resource officer comes and helps them.
So like if, as an example, our officer was down at Caps Lane and stopped 4 kids, the school resource officer would zoom over there and say, I'll handle these 4 kids. I'll get them back to school. Or if the 4 kids are down, today we were at In-N-Out Burger. We were at the other places during lunch hours. There was a lot of concern. Today was 420. There was a lot of concern about what was going to happen. So our regular patrol officers were involved supporting the school resource officer. And the school resource officer really takes the brunt of those kind of situations. He wants to handle them.
Also, the school resource officer is so important also with gang issues, because they're in the schools, they see the students there, they see the interaction. That was the other thing that Stephanie mentioned as well. Some parents were concerned at Frank Zeke, and so Tony had come down to talk with the parents as well about gang issues. Obviously, being on the street and seeing all the different schools and some of the things, that the tagging things that were happening going on as well.
I'll just clarify. Oh, go ahead, B.
Thanks, Megan. The issue, Megan, for the family resource person that we have, they don't just call people for truancy. We got them to connect with all families as often as families need them. And so they don't have the time and energy to do the kind of work that I think this officer would be able to do. And he would be able, or she would be able to hit all the schools. And it would take actually part of that calling burden or sending letter, whatever it is, or they continue with that. But this way, they would continue to emphasize issues within the school and not be overburdened. That would be my feeling, because I feel this is a big deal, and I think it's, for me, I think it's an important thing to try. We've tried many different things, including, I remember, when you and Carolyn were, Johnson, were doing their door-to-door, and there's just a limited time and energy that they could do it, but an officer would be able to pull it off, I believe, more successfully than we've had in the past. I think it's a good investment in education and in our children, because we would like to get them off, and it doesn't have to be kindergarten and first. Kindergarten and TK, it could start at 2nd grade, but knowing that someone cares, and it would be a good thing for the community, the connection between our officers and our school, which has, I feel we have a really nice connection, just like you started out saying, that you feel, really good about that, which is, I know that's true. But I think this is a new thing that someone has just thought about and said, well, it might work. And I think it'd be a good thing to try for a year, and we can revisit it. And actually, if in the middle of the year it looks horrible, you'll revisit it. So, I just think it's a nice, for me, it's a good thing to try.
If I could, I just want to emphasize one point, is our school resource officer that we have now, his primary responsibility is the safety and the security of the schools. And, I just want to draw a distinction, is that this new school resource officer, their primary responsibility would be to work on truancy and getting kids into school. And I think that that's really important to, they would help with security, they would help on the other day of the week, but their primary purpose would be to work towards getting kids back to school. Our current school resource officer, his job is really to make sure our schools stay safe. And there is a distinction between the two.
As a former principal, I would just like to say that for the period of time that we did have a officer working with us, that was, I don't know, was in the late 90s, I guess. It was extremely helpful. I really appreciated it. It was a great help to the principal and the staff at the school because we could call him and say, we have a habitual truant, can you come out and make a house call? And he would be right there. Was very helpful to get the students into school. And I talked to a principal today and said, what's your attendance look like? And that principal told me that they're working really hard with the family liaison, counselor, vice principals, making calls daily, and that 6% they're just having a real struggle with. So I think it's well worth a year and see how it goes.
I guess I just wish I had more data to make this decision. I don't really, I wish I knew more about where exactly, because I couldn't find where we had the last attendance report, so I couldn't really find out what we were doing. Because like you all have said, there's a different approach for young kids than older kids, and where are we gonna focus, and is the best place the resource officer, or is it somebody else? And is it more of a community service officer rather than somebody else? And because now I'm hearing that we can't really split the position, I don't feel comfortable voting on this tonight, but I would like to learn more and then look at it in the context of our budget vote, which I would think would be coming up in the next, in May and June.
Gail?
I remember that it was Carolyn Johnson, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Who was part of her consultancy, was doing this. And I remember listening to her descriptions of some of the houses she was going to, and having done a lot of home visits over my time in this community. I was never comfortable with that, frankly. I just felt, I remember sending a preschool teacher down, and she got chased out with a rake. And they sent my daughter in to pick up some child for a psychiatric appointment, and somebody had been shot at right next door. And I think we have to be very cautious about who we send into certain situations. And I think having the resources of a police officer, I don't know, I think it's worth trying for a year. But I agree with Ann, I really would have liked to have, as I said, more of an idea of what they would do. Right. I'm not even sure I feel comfortable sending some of our resource teachers to do home visits unless we really know what kind of situation they're getting into. I'm not always
By the way,
comfortable
when
with
they're
that.
bad places, most of the time they call me. So
Okay.
I'm going, or I go with them.
Okay, good, you're tall.
And Nicole's seen some of the lovely places I go. She's went with me before.
But even, Gail, I share your concern, even sending our administrators out, it's concerning to me. And, that's another benefit of having an officer.
Well, you're
I'll
also
also tell you
having
if-
two
well,
different
oops,
people
sorry.
have to go. You're having an administrator and another paid person,
Also, the other piece that I was talking to Deb about is that home visits were a lot different when we had oral behind us. Because the thing is that they liked seeing me, because they know I was coming to talk with them and to work things out. And versus now, they know there's nothing behind me. And so when I would come before, hey, I like seeing Mr. Iverson, there's no badge. And I'll talk to you because you want to work stuff out with me before something else happens. It's a little different situation, but certainly, I think some of the places we go, if you guys like to go on tour with me, or Nicole went on a couple of rides with me to see where those places are, I think that you would say you don't want the family liaisons in many of those places.
Okay, let's see, Tyler.
Chief Dewey, I forgot to thank you for coming tonight and being a good partner with the district. It really, it's nice when our community helps to support all the kids, so thank you very much. I know it's probably been a long day for you. So I forgot to thank you earlier, so thank you. One question that I do have is, how are language issues addressed, and especially in our current climate with deportation? How has that issue affected your office, and how do those language barriers, I'm just kind of curious how that interaction goes with the Hispanic community.
So, well, two issues. One is, what are we doing on immigration and others language? So we try as hard as possible to hire as many diverse and different speaking officers as we can. Of the last 3 I hired, 2 are fully Spanish speaking and bilingual. We continue to press in that area as far as I also continue to press to hire as many women officers as I can, and I think that that's underrepresented within the department, and so that's a difficult subject, and it's hard. And I find in the last year I had 25 applicants. Of those 25 applicants, I had 15 of them pass the written test to become a police officer. Of those 15, I had 7 pass the oral board process. They were able to answer questions and understand about the job, what the job entailed. And of those 7, I had 3 that could pass the police background test. And of those 3, 2 speak Spanish. So there's a lot of difficulty. It isn't easy to find officers. It's becoming harder and harder, but we continue to work on it. I would envision hopefully someday that most of my department is bilingual, and we keep working towards that. That would be something that we would want with this position, is to try to have a bilingual officer do it. We have to follow a competitive process and allow everybody to test and see who gets the job. That's part of it. As far as immigration goes, we've always taken a hands-off approach. We don't cooperate with ICE. I'm very proud of the school district stance that they took, and making sure that we have a safe environment for our kids to come to school, and I want to be as supportive as I can in that process, and to take any extra step that I can to make sure that every kid, no matter whether they belong here or don't belong here or whatever they're at in their realm, is that they can come to school, because that's very important, and that's a directive that I've given every one of my officers, and I've been very vocal about within the community, is to make sure that kids can get to school. And that's what our job is that we're going to do. And my function as a police officer is not to enforce a federal rule or federal civil litigation, and to be involved with that. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, thank you very much. And again, thanks again for coming this evening.
Sure.
I think that this is something that we should try. I'm excited about it this evening, and feel that we should move forward with it.
Megan?
So I can see we're getting pretty ready to call the question, and I can see that the majority of the board is supportive of this, so I'm sure it'll pass and we'll be able to move forward. But I did have one question, and then I wanted a clarification on my comments. I know, Jason and maybe Deb, we haven't made the progress on reducing suspensions. We haven't seen that yet that we were hoping to see, and I'm anticipating that will change pretty soon. What impact will that have on attendance? I can't tell whether reducing our suspensions to the rates that we want, is that like, 0.1% that we'll see in attendance, or is it several percentage points? Is that too hard to, because I can't figure out the scale.
Yeah, we were looking at that today, and we'll continue to look at it. I think that one of the things we're seeing, and I talked to you before about, is that we're seeing the number of suspensions and expulsions for non-drug related offenses go down significantly. Right. And what we're struggling with is, 3 and 4 times the number of drug offenses. And like I said, PBIS and many things we do can't really necessarily deal with that issue.
But let's pretend that we managed to deal with it, and we don't see, we're able to handle this drug related, let's pretend, I think it's unlikely, but that is sort of an unusual situation going on right now, and we're able to find some strategies to bring our suspension rates overall down. What impact will it have on attendance?
I can look at that. I have Aries analytics.
Like dramatically? If we reduce, I can't.
It will increase attendance slightly, because I just looked today, we just ran a report.
Yeah, we're looking at the Aries
I
analytics.
haven't fully verified it, but I wanted to look at, of our chronically absent kids,
How many of them were suspensions?
Yes.
And what did you find out?
In the secondary schools, it's higher. In the elementary schools, it's very small.
So the kindergartens, it's not about being suspended, you know that, right?
It's about getting the kids to school.
But it's.
But in the secondary schools, it's not like 70% or anything.
Mhm.
I believe off the top of my head, it's about 18 to 20%.
Of those?
Of the chronically absent students.
A chunk of it was suspensions?
Yes.
Okay.
So
I mean, I'm just bringing that up because I too am very grateful for the partnership with the Ukiah Police Department. This is, my no vote tonight has no reflection on that at all. But I feel a responsibility as a board to really take responsibility for understanding why we haven't achieved the goals we thought we were going to achieve with the staff we put in place before we put additional staff on it. And I feel like we're inconsistent. You know, when we question, well, why aren't we seeing our reading rates go up? We're like, give it more time, it's gonna work, blah, blah, blah. You know, but here we're like, this is not kind of coming out we want, let's add more, let's add another resource officer. And I just think, I'm not saying that in any critical way to any of us, but I feel like I need to be consistent to myself in wanting to really understand the impacts of the investments we already made before we add something else on. So that's why I'm not fully supportive of it right now. I really hope I'm wrong. I really hope this works. Maybe our attendance will skyrocket next year and everyone will.
Just 1%.
Even just 1%. I would gratefully be like, I was totally wrong. I'm so glad we have this school resource officer. I will be the first one. I will be the first one to say, I was wrong. I'm really glad. But I do want to caution us, if we don't see it, we're going to need to be clear about this as a board. So,
absolutely.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion to accept the proposal for the school resource officer to improve truancy and attendance.
Do we have a second?
I would like to make a friendly amendment to that motion, that we negotiate with the police department to see if we can have a required bilingual position, which is different than a preference, so it's an entirely different position. And if that is not possible, then to continue as proposed.
Sure.
Thank you.
That sounds reasonable.
So that's how I
That's very reasonable, Anne. Does that sound fine?
Well, you're the maker of the motion.
Do you accept
I have
that
to,
amendment?
I do accept that.
Thank
you. Sure.
All right, we have a motion.
I'll
to-
second that because that's what we need to do to continue discussion, but it looked like Chief Dewey had some
Yeah.
input on that I'd like to hear about.
Yeah.
I already seconded it.
Oh, you did
Oh, you
second
seconded it?
With made
Oh,
an
I'm
amendment.
confused
With the
then.
friendly
Right.
amendment.
Well, it looked like Chief Dewey had something to say, and it
Anyway.
sounds like we should hear from him.
Yeah, I think we need.
Chief Dewey, can you
I can,
address that for
I
just
can
a minute?
strongly encourage our bilingual officers to apply. The two I just hired just started. You don't want them.
No, and I know we can't resolve this tonight, but it just says that we're gonna
Yeah.
have discussions about it.
Right.
Yeah, I just
Can we read
can't,
back the amendment?
Well, the amendment doesn't make that we have to.
It's true, she said do your very.
Right.
All right.
Can you read that back?
She amended it to negotiate with the police department to require a bilingual position, but if that is not possible, then to continue as proposed.
Yeah.
All right, so now we have a motion and second. So all in favor of the motion to hire a resource officer for the year, if possible bilingual, would you indicate by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No, I'm opposed.
I voted aye, okay. All right.
I just wanted to say one thing publicly, and that is I echo everyone's sentiment around the partnership that we have with Ukiah Police Department, and I want to publicly thank you, Chief Dewey. I've been meaning to come to the city council meeting because the support that you provide our schools, anything that we need, you are there and your officers are there, and I appreciate you all so much.
Yes.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Carolyn, I'm really sorry to add one thing, though. The idea of inviting the district attorney to discuss with us his priorities, is that crazy? I don't know whether that's a crazy thing to do, so that's what
Let
I'm
me
asking.
ponder it,
Okay.
and I'll get back to you.
Okay.
And I would like to add my thank you to Chief Dewey for being here for this long discussion and answering, and Jason for all your input. So, thank you very much. All right. Do we need to take a break?
Well, I already
Okay.
did, but.
All right. 5-minute break.